Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Above the Bar podcast, where each week we belly up to the bar with a new guest, find out what they do, who they are, and what makes them great. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alrighty, folks, welcome back to the Above the Bar podcast. It's your host, Sean. We are bellied up to the bar today. It's another one of those days where we need no security. Things are going to be nice and quiet. We are talking about, and if you know me, this is something that I very much enjoy. This is probably the only martial art that I ever stuck with, next to some of the stuff we did in the Marine Corps, which is, I don't know, it was very different back in the day compared to what we do today. So belling up to the bar today with us, a man who has even his facial hair registered as a lethal weapon. He is halfway to being one of the greatest senseis in Aikido, just based on having the Steven Seagal hairdo. We're making it all happen today. Joining us live from parts unknown, because if he told us, he'd have to kill us with just his thumb. We have Mr. Antonio Aloia. Hi, Antonio.
Hi, thank you for having me on there, and thank you for that awesome intro. Thank you.
I mean, I felt like it was fitting. I mean, I thought it was a good fitting introduction. Was that? I mean, pretty accurate and everything.
Well, I mean, if I had to confirm anything, I would have to kill you with my second thumb.
See,
So
I don't even know what that means. Most of us have a left and a right. He has a second. So just keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. He's packing a second thumb. So before we get into what Antonio's got going on, what's happening, and all those kind of things, let's go ahead and do some house cleaning here real quick. As always, over my right shoulder is the big board for sticker in a cause. That means if you've got something you're supporting, maybe you have your own dojo, like back in the day when I studied, and you have a sticker for it, or you've written your own book, or you've got a club or a podcast, whatever it is, you can reach out to us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, even our email. It's all the Above the Bar podcast. Reach out, let me know what you got going on. I'll tell you where to send the sticker on, and a little bit of free advertisement for you. We'll go ahead and read about whatever you got going on right here on the big board. We did have a sticker. It's sitting upstairs. It is for Generation Axe. Generation Axe is an axe throwing. Have you ever done axe throwing, Antonio?
yes, I have. It's really fun.
It's not. I'm going to be honest with you. When I initially saw it, I was like, this is not going to be easy. Like, it has that not going to be easy vibe. Especially if you ever watch that guy on TikTok who throws he's like, this is a spoon. And he's like throws it into the wood like every time, a perfect throw, and you're like, this dude's like, this is French fry. I throw into wood and kill someone. Like have you ever seen this guy?
Yes.
It's just like, and he's like, see, I kill with French fry, like every time. And I thought it was going to be tough, but my wife and I went to Generation Axe. I cannot recommend them enough. It is a phenomenal place. It is a lot of fun, and they have great instructors that will help you get through it. So if you're in the capital region around Albany, make sure you go to Generation Axe and let them know that you're there to get your throw on. I don't know, but it was fun. Also, we've got, for our sponsors, we have, as always, Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, your locally owned and operated window covering franchise that offers high-quality custom window blinds, shutters, and drapes at an affordable price. Their knowledgeable and experienced team is dedicated to providing excellent customer service and helping you find the perfect window treatment to fit your style and budget. Stay up to date with your latest products, promotions, designs, tips by following them on Facebook and Instagram, Budget Blinds of East Greenbush. And if you tell them about this ad and say, hey, I'm here to belly up to the bar to get some new blinds or window coverings, just for mentioning this ad, they're going to give you a 10% discount off your entire order. And if you're in New York, that's basically a little bit more than your taxes are. So it's definitely a savings, whether you understand it or not. That's Budget Blinds of East Greenbush. So, all right, Antonio, house cleaning's done. The bar is open. Antonio's drinking hard apple juice. It's Snapple. I mean, that's Snapple. What's under the cap? What's your cap say?
It says
That's Snapple. You got to tell me what the cap says.
tennis was originally played with bare hands.
It's handball.
I guess that's what the cap says. It's hardcore though.
I mean, where are you at? You're in the city, right? You're in New York City, right?
I'm actually in the suburbs of Philadelphia.
Okay. Where? Because I used to live in the suburbs of Philly. So where are you at?
Well, I'm about 40 minutes east, so it's sorry, west. Around that Norristown area.
Okay, let's go a little bit. Listen to me. I worked out of Lansdale. I lived in Telford. I owned a house in Red outside of Reading in Fleetwood Blandon area and ran the Allentown recruiting office and the Hatboro Horsham. Where are you at? What town are you in?
Norristown.
Okay, so you're in Norristown.
Yeah.
For good reason. I was in the Marine Corps. I used to have to go to the Norristown courthouse all the time to get records on people. Back when people admit, you had to go do those things. But yeah, I know Norristown, Germantown, all those areas. Still in beautiful Montgomery County.
Still, yep.
I actually like that area. I tell people all the time. Do you ever go up to Lansdale and go to Ray's for a cheesesteak? You ever been there?
I went to Lansdale a few times, but I don't think I've been to Ray's. I'm gonna have to try that out then.
Yeah, it's right off as soon as you come off the exit off the Blue Route into Lansdale. Look, now I'm talking. Listen, I know my PA off the Blue Route. Come on.
Yeah.
And I didn't refer to it as Pennsylvania. PA. And if I said, "Can I get a lager?" What are you going to hand me?
Shoot, Yingling.
That's it. So these are things to know, folks. If you ever in PA, you just say, and you say to someone, "Hey," if you say to them, "I want a Yingling," they know you're not from there.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say you want a lager,
yeah,
they know what you mean. And if you ask for a black and tan, you are not getting Guinness and Harp mixed together. You are going to get a Yingling black and tan. These are all simple things. So that actually is kind of interesting because that's where I studied Aikido at for the first time for 3 years was in Lansdale. So that was where the dojo I trained out of. So you're in that area. What brought you to say, hey, I want to write a book on this history? Because there's been a few books out there that have been written on Aikido. I don't know about other martial arts, but there's been some pretty good ones, very technical books on Aikido too. Like people for some reason like to write books that are super dry, getting into like the circles and the flower patterns and all these things from Sensei. But so what brought you to Aikido?
What brought me to Aikido very simply was my parents did it, and when I was literally able to walk and run, they said, "Hey, we're going to enroll you into martial arts." And it was Aikido for the longest time, and I say me and my sister. From that moment on, we did Aikido, and then we wound up doing a little bit of Taekwondo as well. So we did that side by side. But again, don't ask me like what the similarities are between the two because I was taking them both as children. So it wasn't really like what's that?
As a youth.
Yes, as a youth, a very young and not very technically adept youth, but but moving forward with that, I enrolled in Westchester for my undergrad, and I enrolled in for history. My major is in history, so the last real history course that they take, or they have people take, is what's called the capstone course, and that's where for undergrads, it's hey, you get to write about a certain thing in a way that a historian would do. So you got to go do your research and write your own thesis. And when it's like a thesis, it's kind of like, hey, make sure you get like 15 pages because this is like a 15 weeks course. So you don't do like, super in-depth research. So I wound up doing Aikido. Aikido's American history for that class after I tried to do something with pirates or the samurai or something like that. It didn't really work out. So I wound up choosing Aikido after I talked to my professor at that point. And then I just started to explore everything. The cool thing was is that I had a lot. Not me. My father had a lot of Aikido books in his library, so it kind of made it a little easier for me to find some sources, at least some secondary sources.
Okay.
Um, so got into that, wrote it. I literally poured my heart. I know I poured my heart in and soul into that paper, that class. I had like four other classes, and I said, no, this isn't that important. It's this thing. Um, so at the end, um, the professor basically said to the entire class, "Okay, we're going to go through each paper and just say the positives, the negatives, this, that, and the other thing." And in the back of my head, it's like, I didn't really finish what I wanted to do with this thing. And I'm like, okay, well, how am I going to make it better, make it bigger, make it what I wanted? And this other student says, this feels more like a book. I'm like, that's it. I'm going to make this a book. And I said it like right after that student said, I'm like, that's a good idea. Thank you. And the professor's like, well, hold on, make sure, why don't you try for an article instead instead of a book? And in the back of my mind, I'm like, no, it's going to be a book no matter what.
You weren't trying to hear that at all.
No, absolutely not. I'm like, this is what I'm going to do for the next, I don't know how many years. Um, so then I took time and I researched basically for 3 years. Uh, researched and I should say researched and wrote for 3 years, where I explored more facets of the art than and even the history of it, at least here in America. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing, sort of thing. Unfortunately, it's a little different from other history books or monographs, as they call it in the academia, is that I use a lot of websites as my primary sources, and there are a lot of people who are like, oh, well, websites change this and things like, well, yes, that's true, but if that's the only source that's talking about this specific thing, then I gotta use it.
Yeah, and I think for Aikido, other than practitioners of the art, you'd have to go to Japan, or reference somebody else's history book that they already wrote, and then you're getting into, well, how accurate was their information?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And actually, just to jump off of that, um, there was a shoot, it was in the '80s, and John Stevens wrote this book. It was called Abundant Peace, and it was kind of the go-to biography of O Sensei. I read it I don't know how many times for this research for this book, and even now as I'm just going back and forth with it. Um, but like as time went on, people started pointing out, it's like, well, hey, that doesn't add up to what other people have said, that John Stevens wrote. So there's not only a whole debate of what actually happened in O Sensei's life, but there's a whole separate separate history of what O Sensei's life was. Like if you look at, I know this is going slightly off topic, but
No, make a left
if
turn on this thing.
but if you look at, there is this uh, French Aikidoka who made it his point to learn Japanese and work in Japan so he can do all this stuff. It's Guillaume Erad, I think. Uh, tall French guy, but
Mhm.
he knows like the Japanese Aikido history. He knows the Osensei history like it's the back of his hand. I mean, he's appeared here and there within like the Buddha martial art realm. But he has this whole website dedicated to like doing these facets of Osensei history. It's actually really really kind of cool as you dive into it and you kind of show that information to people who trained like in the '80s, '90s, and even '70s, and they were like, I don't remember anyone saying about that, for a sensei. I'm like, well, that's crazy because here it is.
How many of those old black and white video or films of Sensei did you watch?
Um, about all that I could find on YouTube and all that I could find from Aikido Journal. So there was a lot, and it was just a lot to try to take in with with all that. Just just how he did his movements, how he um, didn't really have any sort of form, and then you try to be like, okay, well, he didn't have a specific form. Like every time he threw, he didn't have a specific stance, or he didn't reset himself into a stance to wait until Uke gets up and throws the attack. He's just already there, sort of thing. So it's kind of like a weird thing of like, okay, well, this is what the source looks like, and then you look over at some of his students and even his son, Kismaru Koichi Tohei, which was the Aikikai chief instructor at the time. You have Gyozo Shioda, who did Yoshinkan. You also have Kenji Tomiki, who did Tomiki Aikido. Where where the and there's a bunch more, but those are like the top three that I'm just naming off the top of my head.
Right.
Um, but there's a bunch more.
Tamiki, so Tamiki was what I was trained in.
Oh, really? That's awesome. Because
So
I
much
no,
hard, much what they would consider in it. And you can correct me. You got the history book. Um, what they considered a much more harder form, much more physical, like we did grappling in ours. Like
mhm,
we would, you would do a basic Aikido move and Ikkyo. Look, I don't even believe it's in my head still. Ikkyo, Nikyo, Sankyo, Yankyo, and Gokyo, the
mhm.
5 basic forms. And then we would be into grappling and getting into that a lot. And yeah, it was fun. So I didn't mean to take you off your topic. Go ahead, keep going.
No, that's all good. No, the Tomiki IQ is a thing that I'm actually really interested in because it's so I don't say different, but it kind of is different if you put Aikikai and Tomiki people side by side. Just just the way that they go about doing the same techniques is a little bit different. And I've talked to two major Tomiki practitioners, and they were both one a joy to talk with. But just you know, I, since there's no real Tomiki people around here, I just it's just a kind of thing that I'm interested in, and I would like to actually learn, like physically learn more more about. That's actually really cool. Who'd you train under? Maybe I can try and find him.
You can. I'll give you a cell phone number. He's in New Jersey. It's not far from you. Keith Bedina,
Keith.
Sensei Bedina, or Shihan. He went by Shihan. He actually started. He was the son of I think his dad was Air Force. He'll if he ends up watching this, he'll send me a message and tell me what I was wrong at. But he was that typical high energy kid. Dad was in the Air Force and was coaching like like Air Force basketball or something like that. And he wouldn't settle down as a kid. And there was somebody on the base over in Japan where they were that was training other service members in Aikido. He sent him off. He's like, go learn, go, goodbye, get out of my face, go learn Aikido and whatever they were doing. So he spent all his youth training and learning and getting into it. We used to do when they would do Lansdale Day up in
Mhm,
Lansdale, we would do street demonstrations. Somewhere I have a picture. He got into samurai sword also, so we all trained in sword. You can't see it. Uh, let's see here if I can my camera. I'm gonna get if you look on that far wall next to my dad's pool stick to the left of that, you see that bag?
mhm.
That's my Yaido.
Oh, that's
So,
awesome.
and if you don't know what a Yaido is, folks, that's a sword without an edge. And my Bokan, I think, is in there also. Um, and that's just a wooden sword, practice sword. But he got into it, and then he had Sabatine Ryu Dojo up in Lansdale, and we were there. But that was different, man. Like I've been to dojos before, and I tried to train after I left there. He created such a one-off. family atmosphere that like our kids did it. Our kids trained there. We would go to other dojos, and I'm curious of your vibe on this. And we watched other Aikido practitioners, and we were all like, "You guys suck, horrible." Because if you ever seen these guys, like we watched it, like this guy he was kneeling, and somebody else put his hands on his shoulder and was like, rolled his shoulders and did one of these, and the guy's like, "Oh," and goes
Mhm.
flying away. And we were like, we're all like head tilted, doing the RCA dog tip nipper, going, "You're telling me because you held his shoulders, he was able to just push his energy through you?" And these guys were like, "Absolutely, try." So we would get up there and be like, "Poof," and the guy's like, "Ugh." We're all like, what do you want me to, am I supposed to do something here?" So now I want to ask this question because I kind of getting this vibe. My buddy Nate, if you only would have studied fantasy football as much as you did Shotokan, think about how good you would be at fantasy football. And we do have a lot in common, Nate. To death, I harass him every chance I get. But I'm curious. So it sounds like you studied the Aikido as a kid, and then got out of it, and then went back to it. Is that what I'm hearing?
I had a consistent flow of training.
Okay, so you did
To
stay with it.
Yeah, to be I mean, to be honest, I did I mean, like every teenager, it's just kind of like, well, I don't want to do Aikido anymore, and that lasted for like a month, and then I went back. So I guess I'm not really that good at rebelling, but I mean,
I'm going to be a rebel, but just for this moment. Then I'll go back.
yeah, basically. So I had a uh consistent flow of training, and that's really how I got into the whole um the whole writing process, because it was a constant a constant in my life, and it still is a constant in my life. The actually funny thing is, like 2 hours ago I was training, so I
Awesome.
mean it's just it's just a
Why is
thing I
not
do.
everybody from your dojo watching this right now? Did you not tell them?
I totally I totally went like that.
Ah, what are you doing? Come on there, Antonio. Well, and Nate brings up a great question, and I kind of want to go. We're going to make
Mhm.
a little bit of a left turn here, but it goes with this. Have you seen, even in the dojos that you've trained at, because you said you've been pretty consistent, any changes or any influences from shows like Cobra Kai, people starting to come in, or younger people coming into dojos looking to train?
um Now and preface this as this is my experience, so it's only a small snapshot. Can't really say for the greater amount. Um, Unfortunately, with the popularity of Cobra Kai, can't really deny anything that's popular on Netflix that has some sort of cultural appeal. But we have not gotten that we the dojo that we're at, we have not gotten that influx of people that have like, oh my god, Cobra Kai, oh my god, the Karate Kid.
Right.
The funny thing is that it's it says karate in the name, so they just look up karate probably. So it's just like they're just gonna go to the karate dojo or the Kempo karate, or what a
Tiger
Taekwondo
Showman.
school that is.
Let me get some Tiger Showman in my life.
Yeah, yeah, Tiger Showman, or Action Shark, or
Oh,
uh,
yes, I forgot about that one. Action Shark and Tiger Showman. When I was a kid, it was down in Baltimore. It was Kim's Karate, Master Kim.
oh, yeah, yeah, okay.
That was a big chain. And look, folks, if you're interested in Antonio's book, you can definitely go to his website. It's Martial Art History, no S at the end of arts. And the book is Aikido Coming to America, a brief history of the arts, forgotten American pioneers, 1950 to 1995. Take a look at it. I mean, again, and if you're looking to follow him on Instagram, he's got his Instagram. He's a baller life like that. He's on the gram doing it for the gram. And his Instagram is May and I'm gonna mess it up. Métis history. I can't read it. Métis history. I couldn't read it for a second. And Nate's saying Kim's Karate's still big in Baltimore. Like I met Master Kim one time. Nate, Master Kim at this point would have to be like 170 years old, if he's still around. But yeah, and you know what? It kind of, with this history, I'm curious. I'm gonna ask you what your personal feelings on the whole Steven Seagal, um, what would you call that? Drama or scandal? I like scandal better.
Mhm.
Uh, that whole piece. But what is what are some of the things that you learn? And folks, when we're saying O Sensei, um, O Sensei, what was his real name? Because I forget his real name.
That's okay. His real name was Morie Ueshiba.
And they called him O Sensei because he was the original sensei of this. He created this martial art. And let's see if you can correct me if I'm wrong, Antonio. Created the martial art during the Second World War. Um, I feel like he created it for his son or something like that, but I can't remember. He was a judo or jujitsu.
He actually did both.
Okay, so he did both, and he couldn't do the throws anymore. Like he wasn't taking that impact anymore. It just wasn't happening. That's where the term the old man's art comes from, because it's redirecting other people's energy as kind of like they're throwing a punch, just pull their arm and let it keep going past you so you don't have to get hit in the face with it. He created this, and it kind of just became its own thing, its own hybrid. It's a lot of circles. If you like circles, like you'll love Aikido because it's all about circles. Everything is a circle or the shape of, they get very Japanese about it with like shape of a flower. Oh, you move like the petal in the flower and all those things. Nate, he didn't really mix the two. He just took what was comfortable on your feet about the two. Is that that sound good, Antonio? Or correct me if I'm wrong on any of this shit.
No, that's okay. The generalness is perfect. It's fine.
And that's why I love you, Andrew. And I will send that money to you just for saying it's the best podcast out there. I appreciate you because I love you, Andrew. But yeah. So and then he started training service members afterwards, and that's kind of how did that I'm kind of curious about that. Like I've heard like Americans that stayed over there kind of found a way to learn from him, but what was really how did that portion of it start that forced it to start coming back to the States?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so the so after World War II, we have to take this context into it, and maybe a lot of the military history guys out there would remember or know this. But prior to Japan's surrender in 1945, the United States and the Allied forces within the Pacific basically firebombed almost the entire country of Japan. So, and not to mention we dropped two nukes on them. So they had to essentially rebuild after this whole thing. So they took literally from 1945 to, let's just say, 1955 for numbers sake, to really rebuild itself to try and actually make something of semblance of what was before the firebombing and stuff. Also important to note that the United States pumped a whole bunch of money into Japan so that they could rebuild it. Anyway, so 1955-ish rolls around. So by the mid 50s, things are starting to get back to normal, minus the whole super ultra nationalistic thing of, oh hey, Japan's the best thing ever. Um, so according to what I have found, the first real person to start teaching Aikido outside of what is now considered Hanbu, and outside of like the O Sensei line, is Gozo Shioda, who later creates his own Yoshinkan Aikido. He starts teaching basic self defense stuff, or just Aikido in general, to workers. I can't remember off top. I think they were like steel workers. And since this is still the building up phase, you have a bunch of like, oh, hey, you have resources, I want your resources too. So the workers had to fight off people, sort of thing. So
Okay, so
Shield,
people like coming to work sites trying to steal items to take them,
yeah,
and they needed a way to defend themselves.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I mean, this was like, proto Mad Max right now. It's, it's trying to move past it, right? But people are still doing like weird stuff like that. Um, so you have Shield doing that, and he winds up getting a following. Um, there he actually gets backing from I think one or two bankers to basically build up his Yoshinkan dojo. So at that point, you move over to the Kanto region, or the Tokyo region, and you have O Sensei's son and Tohei. So O Sensei's son is Kismaru, and you have Koichi Tohei, and both of them were kind of like, "Hey, Shioda's doing something over there. We need to get our crap together." It should also be noted, and I do apologize if this is like long-winded, but history winds up becoming long-winded.
It's
Um,
a dry point to it, but I mean, we're gonna get to it because we're gonna talk about Steven Seagal, folks.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
I mean, look, Antonio's got the hair and everything. You got a ponytail back there, don't you, Antonio?
Yes, I
See it?
yes I
Oh,
do.
got it. So they decide, hey, this he's doing it over there. We need to
Yeah,
start our
yeah,
shit together here.
yeah. So there was some prodding that Kismaru had to do with O Sensei. He's like, "Hey, it's like, hey, we have to get this going because you know what I mean, because we can't be left behind." And O Sensei one not for being in charge of things. He's like, after a bit, he's like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead, son, do it." So Kismaru just basically builds up what is now Aikikai Hambu. Um, uh, and he starts gathering people back. He's like, "Hey, let's do this again." He gets Tohei to write some of the curriculum. Actually, he and himself write curriculum. He Both of them get sayings and speeches and stuff that O Sensei did. They edit them because, and this is a whole other conversation too that we may probably not have time for. But O Sensei was really big into religion, so he would start quoting like obscure religious references that most of the modern Japanese wouldn't remember. Like there's stories of him coming from Iwama down to Tokyo. Well, he'll just give like these giant lectures with like one or two techniques, and all the young guys there, and this is like the 60s, and all the young guys there, like in their 18, 19, 20, 21s and stuff like that, trying to sit on their knees for long periods of time. And when people ask him about this, things like, "Oh my God, it's O Sensei saying some stuff," and they're like, "I don't understand. I don't remember. I don't understand any of it." It was just like, I just wanted to train. I didn't know anything about the spiritual stuff.
Right.
So
Well, it's funny you bring that up. Just for a sidebar, a gentleman I met who had trained over there and trained with one of those one of like this is and if folks if you've ever met anyone who's trained in Japan with anyone, it matters their lineage back to somebody. So he had trained with somebody who like had trained with Osensei's son or trained with Osensei. I don't remember, but he was like, I wanted to thank the guy, and the guy saw he was an American and had well over hour conversations with other people while ignoring him, while he sat on his knees, and his sensei, who was this guy's uh, student, watched him. And he said when he got done and the guy finally acknowledged him, "Oh, thank you for coming. I appreciate you." One of those. And then that sensei left. He said his sensei was so relieved he didn't get up and move like most Americans be like, "Fuck you, dude. I'm not gonna play this game with you." They had to help him up because his legs had just locked up on him. There was no movement. So they all get together. They build this school. I'm sorry, you just reminded me of
yeah,
that kneeling thing.
that's all good.
Sensei's doing, Sermon on the Mound. People, Sermon on the Mount and a good throw. So
Hmm.
how does it keep moving from there?
So Kismaru has Kismaru, and actually it's really Kismaru. Toei's just teaching at this point, but Kisprino gets this idea. It's like, hey, we need to build this thing back up, and we need to send people out. So he starts sending people out all across Japan, and the American bases, since they're in plethora there, because the war just happened, and everyone wants to make sure that Japan's not going to go on a genocidal maniac thing again. So they wound up sending teachers to these camps, these bases. Aikikai did it, Yoshinkan did it, Tomiki did it, all these other schools, styles, and even arts just did it. So that's where like the first real real Americans, real Westerners, excuse me, get a taste for Aikido and the Eastern martial arts. It's
Okay.
it's through the post-war periods, through the Korean War, it's through Vietnam, where people are stationed, and they take this stuff and they bring them back over to the United States. And at the same time, Aikikai is still sending out people all over the world. I think the first one to go fully abroad was to France, and that was in I think 61, I think. And then Tohei winds up getting an invitation to go to Hawaii, and I think 62. And since Hawaii is technically not a territory, as a state, it was a territory. So you could argue that Tohei coming over to there in 60 something to Hawaii was like the first time that IQ was brought to the mainland,
Makes
or brought to America. Sorry.
to America because it was a U.S. territory at the time.
Right.
That's an interesting vibe. So as this is going, so these guys are spreading this out. So they're spreading the good word. We've kind of hinted at some of this. So as it's growing in popular, but Aikido is a weird martial arts from a popularity standpoint. I feel like you really have to almost. It's the CrossFit of martial arts. Like some guys weight train, some guys run cardio, but like if you're more of a purist, you're like, I do Aikido. Like, does that make sense? Like it's not like everybody's like, so I go to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or I study Jiu-Jitsu, which listen, folks, don't fuck with somebody if they know Jiu-Jitsu. Don't mess with nobody if they know Judo. Like listen to me. Leave them people alone. Don't think look, they know what they're doing. But I'm gonna be honest with you. Most martial artists, if you really study, they know what to do. If the guy tells you he did it for 3 years and hasn't done it in another like 20, he probably forgot most of this shit. You can beat kids up. That's me. I'm not. But why do you think, and you mentioned this, I mean, it's a modern martial art. I don't know of anything that's more modern. Maybe Brazilian jiu-jitsu as an offshoot of real jiu-jitsu. Call that. Am I
Well,
wrong?
yeah. I'm just laughing because like there is that debate where it's like it's Japanese jiu-jitsu. No, it's actually judo, but it's not real jiu-jitsu. And it's like, what is real jiu-jitsu now? But I mean,
Like to me, jiu-jitsu comes from Japan. You don't put the word Brazilian in front of it. If you want Brazilian martial art, I call that capoeira.
Mhm.
That's that. Am I wrong? Tell me if I'm wrong, Antonio. You can tell me I'm wrong. My friends do it all the time. So am I wrong?
Not with the information that I have right now. So you're good.
So like capoeira is their martial art, right?
Hmm.
It's Brazilian. Brazilian jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu, but a bunch of Brazilian guys doing it and putting their spin on it.
Yes. The unfortunate part is that there's actually like a really big history with that. That I am not well versed in, because it actually gets really interesting. It culminates, or it starts actually before this whole before the World War starts, or World War II starts. So it's actually kind of cool how at least this
Oh,
comes to Brazil, and then like the guy, a guy comes and then the guy stays for like 2 or 3 years. The guy leaves, and then it's left with like the Gracie and the Helios and all those families there, and they're like, well, how we one remember it, but two, then how do we make it better, or at least make it
Yeah,
Brazilian?
make it
So I mean, in that sense, it can be their own, but
oh,
I mean, that's also another conversation about the globalization and the internationalness of everything now more so than ever. So yeah.
what's his name? Frank Dukes.
Hmm.
If you guys don't know who Frank Dukes is, that's Frank Dukes is the movie Bloodsport. And I've actually seen, here's one for you, Antonio. In Yuma, Arizona, I don't know if it's there anymore. I actually saw, and I don't remember what they called it anymore, but Duke's Foo or whatever the hell he called it. Um, hey there, can't stay and watch. Hey, love you too, brother. Be safe there, Brandon. But I saw one of Frank Duke's actual dojos, and if you watch the movie Bloodsport, they talk about that he did this. I don't know anybody who still does what he did, but
Hmm.
do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, absolutely.
So, but I'm we're making left turns for a minute.
That's
Nate,
okay.
I promise you, I will ask your question. Uh, Nate, how do you have a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and studied under Hoist Gracie form? Nate, you and I got to talk, Nate. Like, you're a busy ass man. Hey, folks, go check out Paranormal and the Funhouse. Love those guys. So let's go ahead and throw it out. I'm going to throw out one name again. I've teased this. I want to know, as somebody who has studied the history, I'm going to almost call you a purist a little bit, Antonio. Do you want to give the Reader's Digest version of Steven Seagal, or I can give the Reader's Digest version? But I want to know your feelings on Steven Seagal and Aikido.
Okay. So, well, one, I think everyone should have an idea of who Steven Seagal is, but the quick, the Spark Notes version of it is that he's a tall American man who began training in Aikido in the 70s in Japan. And he winds up being one of the first Americans to actually run a dojo in Japan. The funny enough is that it was because he married his first wife, and that first wife was the daughter of the dojo owner. So he kind of got it through there. And he taught a slightly different style of Aikido. Now it's still considered Aikikai, or pure line. I say this in quotes because it's martial arts, and it's yeah.
Who's teaching?
It gets
Yeah.
yeah, it gets really muddy anyway. But so he's there, he's doing his stuff there. He's doing a slightly different, more harsher style of Aikido. They call it combat Aikido. Apparently, a lot of people went to his classes, his attention Aikido um, classes, because they wanted to feel safe on the subway and all this other stuff. Because even still in the 70s, you had the Yakuza and all these other gangs popping up. So that's actually where he meets Matsuoka, who was for his longest time his student, but also like his go-to stunt guy. So after his little stint in Japan, he comes back to California. He opens up a dojo in the 80s, and it's and as dojos happen in any which way, it's not like the best source of income. So he's just doing things there. So then, come like right before 1988, say 86, 87, let's just say that, he starts getting into the movie business. He actually choreographs a fight for, oh, I'm blanking on the name, but it was one of the last movies with Toshio Mifune. Um, really blank on the name. Sorry. So he actually choreographs a fight there, and Matsuoka plays one of the bad guys, and that gives him a shoehorn into um, the movie business. And I'm forgetting student names. I don't think it's Warner, but he gets his shoe into that movie company, and the producer guy who saw tapes of it, he's like, "Oh my god, this is like, this is awesome. We should do something." Um, so then 1988 rolls around, and it's Above the Law. Above the Law
Great
hits.
movie. I love Above the Law. I do
Y-
that.
y-
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Sometimes you gotta forget that Steven Seagal is not the greatest of actors, but you still like it's still a thing. Like, hey, that's cool. Let's take out that thing, and everything else is good.
Every Steven Seagal big fight scene, they all run at him in the
Mhm.
exact same line, like a sensei standing in the middle of the mat, and the students are like running up, and he's like, every single one of them is
Yeah,
exactly the same
actually,
as
yeah,
every video you watch.
and that was a big part of, because one, the producer guy, what was like, we got to show this thing, we got to show Aikido, but even he was like, I'm going to do Aikido stuff. So like his first five movies, according to critics and actually according to some people too, is that they're his staple movies, and it's those five movies that really helped push Aikido to the mainstream conscious. Um, you have Above the Law, you have I'm going to go in not the right order. Above the Law, Under Siege, you got
I don't
Glimmerman, you got uh anyway, I'm not remembering right
know,
now.
but, I mean, we have I mean, you're trying to remember movies that may be as old or if not older than you, so Out for Justice,
Oh,
uh,
yes.
Siege, On Deadly Ground, Under Siege
Mhm.
2, Executive Decision, The Glimmer Man, Fire Down Below. Fire Down Below was interesting. That's the one where he's like on the oil out in the oil fields with the Native Americans. Did you know who was in one of his movies?
Who?
Ar- Arlie Ermy.
Really?
He fights Arlie Ermy in a movie. Like Arlie Ermy looks like he was older when he passed away, but he fights like Arlie Ermy. He's like, listen here, there you piece of shit. And like he tries to be the drill instructor, go on this. You have Exit Wound, that's with Wesley Snipes, if I remember right. Like he did, like, I mean, you start looking through his Out for a Kill,
Mhm.
uh, you start looking at his movies and you're like, my God, this guy did a lot of movies. I mean, you just I, I never realized, like as you were talking, and now with the dyed goatee and the dyed. Do you remember when he was like a cop? He was like a
Mhm.
duly a
Mhm.
duly, sworn in deputy or something like that, and he had his own TV show where he's like, "Stop
Mhm.
people. Listen here, punk."
That, and then he would actually change to, like a whole Cajun thing. Like, I mean,
Yes.
he would change, like, so many different accents. It was interesting to watch, and then, like, oh, man.
He was so bad. He was so horrible. Now, but let me ask this question. So, but what is your feeling on a guy like that who, I see the positive. He brought it to a mainstream understanding. But if you look at the traditional Japanese, he left it. He was a married man in Japan, first American to own a dojo in Japan, gifted by his father-in-law. He leaves that woman there. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna go to California and do this Hollywood thing. Leaves her there and really, you know, damages that, loses face for that woman who had nothing to do with this. That's when he married Kelly LeBrock. Um,
Mhm.
so what's your, best question I have is good ambassador, bad ambassador. What's your feelings?
Well, this is also with the thing of hindsight, but in the beginning, I think he was a positive, ambassador. I mean, he had a bit of, chip on his shoulder when, in those first few movies doing interviews and stuff like that. But then again, like, that's like, yeah, you just got
Exactly.
brought into stardom, so it's like, that's a whole new thing, life experience that I haven't experienced yet, so I wouldn't know. But as he from what it seemed like, he really got into, he really started to believe that the roles were him. So he started to believe that he was that special agent, he was that cop, he was that guy out for whatever. And everyone just kind of looked at him and was like, what are you doing? I mean, there are a good amount of stories. um I think Howard Stern gave one. Joe Rogan gave another, about like how like deadpan serious he was about everything. Um, and everyone was like, "What? What are you talking about?" Actually, I'll give like a little thing here. Like, someone was like writing a script with him or something like that, and Seagal goes back into a room, and he spends hours there. He comes out, and he says to the guy, I'm not going to try and do his voice because I'm probably going to laugh at it. But he's like, I just read the best script ever. And his friend was like, okay, well, cool, this is awesome. Who wrote it? Without skipping a beat, deadpan, I wrote it. So
I love him. See, this is what I love about him. If we got to get ready to close the bar up here. I mean, there's so much we can talk about with that guy alone. Like, supposedly, rumor has it that Vladimir Putin is a huge Seagal fan.
oh,
And
he wound up getting, I think, Russian citizenship a few years
yes,
ago, and then even after the whole Crimea incident back in what 2014 to 2015, a few years after that, he was there on some sort of news thing defending Putin. So
yeah,
there is,
rumor is that's where he's still at. Nobody knows where he is right now. He is
yeah,
falling off the face of the earth.
actually, there's a really cool two-part video by this self-proclaimed cry nerd. It's by Jesse Enkamp. He's a Swedish guy. He and his brother wound up actually talking with him on like a 2-3 day scale, and that was when he was in Dubai. That was like probably like a good year ago, or at least 8 months ago. And to be honest, that's like the first time I've seen in a while
Oh,
that Steven Seagal was like coherent and like actually realistically serious. You know what I mean?
focus properly. Well, he got caught up in
Yeah.
the Me Too movement also.
Well, yeah, there was a lot of stuff, and the fact that there was a lot of out of court settlement stuff leads me to believe some other things, which then has kind of almost made it seem that Steven Seagal is not the best ambassador for Aikido anymore, and there really hasn't been any real person to take up that mantle. I mean, the next best thing for karate is um
Cobra Kai,
yeah, Cobra Kai, and before that was Jean-Claude Van Damme. But
right?
I mean, um yeah, no one really has come to take over that spot.
You bring up a great point. I mean, we've got this mixed martial art, and that's I give it a lot of credit. I mean, even the Marine Corps, when I was first in, we trained in what was called line training, and it stood for linear inverted neurological override. It was 12 steps, I think it was 12, that basically went from one extreme of eye gouge, throat punch, or groin hit, or to the farthest extreme, which was some knife technique and stuff like that. But all of them ended with a heel strike to the Achilles and a heel strike to the temple. It was to kill someone, which
Hmm.
is, guess what, folks? This kindler, gentler bullshit that the service is doing with mixed martial arts is crap. Trust me, we need to go back to line training and teaching guys how to actually end the enemy, not like, I've subdued you, I've put zip ties on your hands. Time to take you away. It's so stupid to me. But now that's what we do. We do line training, and we've mixed all these martial arts, and we've got, back in the early days, they actually had like the Shamrocks of the world coming in and training and teaching it at these studios. And look, I take nothing away from these guys. They'd all whoop my ass right now. That's why I have a concealed carry permit. Um, but reality of it is these guys, they're badasses. I take nothing away from them, but we don't have anybody that movie guy anymore that's like the Bruce Lee, the Chuck Norris, the Steven Seagal, the Van Damme. Who was the Perfect Weapon? The movie Perfect Weapon. He should have done more movies. Jeff Speakman. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
Jeff Speakman, who only did the Perfect Weapon, which was a great movie. It was fun for its time. I doubt it holds up well. There's nobody out there doing those kind of things. I think that genre is hurting right now. Like the last time we had it was like Hidden Dragon, Flying Chicken, or whatever it was.
Mhm.
Um, those movies that are very like China, Japan, over the top, like people like I land on top of bamboo shoots and jump. That shit. It Is there anything that you've learned from writing your book? And I know we're getting close on time here. Anything you learned from writing your book that tells you like we could see a resurgence in this, or a lot of these martial arts do need to go back to the basics to kind of reinvigorate themselves? What are your thoughts there?
Well, the 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 thing with that is that unfortunately the book, since it released in 2020, it was literally on the cusp before COVID hit. So that's, I mean, unfortunately the book isn't going to really answer that kind of question. Um, but like moving forward now, it's kind of I don't know how you are with religion, but my one friend is religious, but she was saying like to give or to sorry, I'm trying to find the right words, but to make Christianity appeal to the newer generation, you have to package it in a way for the newer generation to understand it and come to it, sort of thing, and then have those opportunities to do so without without diluting the message. Um, that that sort of mindset, that sort of frame, um, most likely should be the way that we as Aikidoka, maybe even just martial arts in general, because we did still take a big hit from COVID and everything
Yep.
else that was around from it. We can't fight that at all, or discredit that, I should say. But tr- it comes back down to, and from the people I've talked for, for the book, even for my online chronicle, martial arts of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Um, all of them struck me as I was reading or interviewing them. All of them struck me as like they were that specific kind of person that one Aikido fit their personal philosophy or fit their worldview, and then also that they were somebody that would be committed to a long haul of some sorts.
Yeah.
Um, just a little tidbit. I work a little bit in the public school system, and I can tell you that some of the ninth graders are actually in general, kids don't have that attention span for one history, but two, um, some of the other school subjects. So it's kind of like this battling thing of like to stay true to the art, but then also try and get more people, or at least get more exposure. But we have more and more people who are not either one willing to take that step, willing to take that long term commitment to get at least decent at it. Uh, two to or actually or two that Aikido fits their outlook, their mindset, their worldview, sort of thing. I
Right.
know that was, I know it's kind of like a complicated answer in a way, but it's a bit hard because I've been trying to figure out one way, shape, or form to be like, hey, why don't you try this? And people are like, hey, that's cool to watch on YouTube, not
Well,
not
it's martial
not to
arts.
do.
I think you're absolutely right. Martial arts in general takes a commitment, and most of us have the attention span of a goldfish. We got to close the bar up here, folks. Look, go check out what Antonio Aloia has going on. You can find him at martialarthistory.com. There's no S after art, so it's martialarthistory.com. His Instagram is May TT History. He's very engaging. He's got a lot going on. Nate, I'll ask your question here in a minute, Nate, just so we can sign it up. If you're finding us through Antonio, please give us a like, share, follow Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram. I say this every week. Look, for Antonio's book to blow up and people to find it and get an opportunity to read about his book and to understand that American history and the pioneers of Aikido, from the 1950s to 1995, to know what that meant to go on that journey, especially after the Second World War, when anything Japanese was very much still, there was a very race-related overtone to everything in this country, and to bring something like that here. Amazing book. Go check out what Antonio's got going on, but give us those like, follows, and shares. That's how this grows. That's how this matters. The biggest thing you can do for us on this show is going on to Apple or going on to Spotify, giving us that 5-star rating, leaving a comment about how you felt listening to this, how you felt about Antonio as a guest. Even other podcasters are going to go look up Antonio and say, oh, well, he's got a 5-star rating. People talk good about him on that podcast. I want him to be a guest. And Eileen, I wish you were here too. And Eileen, we could do another podcast, you and me, but my aunt out in Montana. But definitely one of those kind of things. Get to know what he's got going on, get to understand it. I will tell you that Aikido personally is a very spiritual art. It gets very much into what's around you, your space, understanding your personal space, understanding your personal energy, and how your body moves. I will tell you, it taught me movement of myself and how my hands work in a very different way that I never understood. And none of it made me lose my sight or grew hair on my palms. None of that happened. So we're good. Make sure you're checking out what Antonio's got going on. Make sure you see what he's got happening. Real quick, this is a short week for us. We're going to do a show on Saturday. We're going to do a show next Wednesday. We normally never do Saturday shows, but we got some special guests coming up. Lady coming on, her name's Julie. She is I don't remember the right term, a complete contractor. She's the only female in California that does this, to where you can go to her. She can give you the architectural, she can give you the design, she can give you everything and build your house for you or whatever it is that you need. So she's coming on Saturday. We're going to be talking about that. Please like, follow, share. I'm going to ask Nate's question real quick. Do you have a go-to meal after training? Do you have your meal? What's your meal?
My meal, my training is usually after my dinner. So when I get back home, I kind of get up on carbs. So it's kind of like peanut butter crackers.
Peanut butter crackers. I like it. So, all right, brother. So here's one of the rules of the show. And don't log off after this. As we do on every episode, the guest gets the final word. So what's the final word for us, Antonio?
Well, one, thank you for having me. Two, if you're interested in Aikido history, please take a look at Aikido Comes to America. You can find it at martialarthistory.com, or you can find it up on Amazon as well. If you want to learn more about just martial arts in general in America, and their history, please check out martialarthistory.com. It ranges from Aikido to Judo to Olympic fencing to even historical fencing, and even Japanese swordsmanship. So it's it's kind of a lot there if you're interested in Japanese martial arts or just martial arts in general in America. So please check out those things, and please log back on to Above the Bar and enjoy it.
Alrighty, folks, be sure to push your stool in.
This has been an Earplug Podcast presentation, found on earplugpodcast.com, iTunes, SoundCloud, and wherever your favorite podcasts are found.